What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Young Electrician Podcast. My name is Ruben Young, aka the Young Electrician. Here in this podcast, we like to see electricians grow, not just in the field, but also in their personal lives. We believe that your personal life and your work life shouldn't compete, but complement each other. With that said, today we are going to talk about something I think all of us think about, especially getting into contracting for ourselves, but a lot of us don't know about, and that's estimating. So I got today Robert Boulder with Estimating Partners. Robert, how are you doing?
Hey, what's up, Ruben, man? Thanks for having me on. I'm doing well over here in New York, and it's a pleasure.
Nice. So there's gonna be no East Coast, West Coast beef on this podcast. I'm just playing. Robert, thank you for coming on. This is awesome, man. I'm really excited to talk to you because, as I was telling you before the podcast, I love having people on that could give some assistance or give some insight to new contractors, struggling contractors. And I think estimating is probably the number one thing that makes or breaks a company. If you get the estimate wrong, you make no money or you're in the red. If you get it right, everybody gets fed, your kids go to college, your company stays afloat. So I think what you're doing is really important. Let's hop on and just say, if you want to share, how did you get into estimating? What was your drive? And how'd that start?
So I started in contract. So my father owns a company. He owns a refrigeration company, does refrigeration and controls work, and out of New York. And he did a lot of retail work, a lot of like Walmart type work, and I traveled around the country a lot doing that. I was in the field. I was doing a lot of conduit stuff, a lot of like low voltage work, and also the refrigeration side. And I did that for a few years. And I started running those projects in the field, still in the field. And eventually it came to a point where I was doing all the estimating, all the project management, all the field where, it was my dad's company. So I was wearing a lot of hats, and as he grew, so did I, and I started really learning how to understand the blueprints, how to understand, project conditions, how to understand logistics behind it, and those things eventually led me to a position in the office where that's what I was doing all the time, estimating the projects. It was very simple with, that type of retail work, because retail it's all cookie cutter, it's all the same. A Walmart in California is the same as a Walmart in New York, right? It's pretty similar. The specs and everything pretty much, out of the box. So I did that for a long time. I learned the trade, the mechanical trade, the controls, which was nice. That was nice because I got a little bit electrical in there because of all the controls work. I was learning how to do pipe work. I was understanding linear footages of wire. I really kind of started understanding that on the estimating side and the field side. And then eventually I just became an estimator. And I kind of outgrew my dad's company. We had some, working with family is always tough. I moved to another mechanical company. I kind of jumped around a little bit. I was a chief estimator for a few different mechanical companies over the period of a few years. And, that went well. I was good at it. I'm able to speak to people. That was a big part of it. It's estimating, kind of sales and estimating kind of go hand in hand when you're working for bigger contractors in New York, at least. And, I was good at it and eventually landed at a consulting firm.
Oh, nice.
Where I was at for a few years. And there I got to meet a lot of different subcontractors. I dealt with a lot of electrical. That's where I really started my real electrical estimating, because I took over all MEP. So the plumbing was easy enough because I knew mechanical piping. Electrical was a jump for me, but I understand what it took to run conduit. I understood electrical to some extent, and I just learned on the fly. I'm able to talk to people. That helps. So when I'm talking to people, I'm learning, even though they think I know what I'm talking about half the time. I'm really learning from them. And I put that into action, and I did very well there. And when I left that company to take, I own my company estimating partner, but I also work for a general contractor where I'm the MEP estimator as a full-time job.
Nice.
Um, so when I took that job, a lot of my consulting clients asked me, can you do some work on the side for us? Can you continue on doing our estimate? They like what they got. They got work for me. They got made money on those jobs. Um, so I said, okay, I'll try, and it's
Yep.
been crazy. So that was about 6 months ago, and business is going great. Um, Spread thin, but it's pedal to the metal right now while this thing kicks up. But that's how I got to where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Nice. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I was talking to a newer contractor buddy of mine, and I was like, "Hey, you should come on the podcast." And he said, "What am I talking about? What am I going to talk about? Being stressed out?" He was like, "I'm so busy." I was like, all right, you're cool,
This true.
awesome." So that's really cool. Um, you took on these projects. Were they too small for the consulting company to take on, and you were just like, "All right, they need somebody at another capacity," or
Oh, so really what it
how'd that
is
happen?
so I had my own clients while I worked for this other it was another estimating company that I just worked for the guy. And
Okay.
these were my clients from him, that I met through working with him. When I left that company I wanted to get back to a contractor. I really like working in the contractor. Um,
Okay.
so that's why I went back. But in that process, became this opportunity to
Yeah.
continue working with these clients. I would say 95% of them did the same thing. They called me and asked me, and I said, at first I felt a little weird about it, but then they told me that the owner of that company was kind of like lying to them, telling them I was still there. So I
Oh,
was like,
got you.
F it. I continued doing that work for these guys, and I'm happy I did because I enjoy those relationships. That people, these are contractors that I've worked with for a few years now, that I've seen grow because of the process that I put in place with them. I've helped some contractors even build their own in-house estimating departments. I've trained estimators for them. I sometimes train myself out of work, but for me, it's more about these relationships that I gain. Like, I'm very connected in
Yeah.
New York construction. I've dealt with so many different contractors, so many different people, and just helping people out and getting them to a point where they don't need me anymore, but they're happy in what they have going on, has been
Yeah.
like even better for business than just keeping going with their estimates. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's actually been really good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of companies out there. There's a lot of new companies coming up. So I think working yourself out of a contractor, out of a job isn't a bad thing. I think where you're at, especially if you're doing something like helping somebody build an estimating
Mm-hmm.
team. I know you were telling me that before when we were chatting on Instagram, because that's a cool thing to have. You don't just help them out. You don't just get paid for the job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you build the relationship for the future. Who the heck are they? Who are they going to send somebody to in the future that's starting
Mm-hmm.
off? They're going to send them to you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this guy's not just good, but he went above and beyond and did a lot for us. So that's awesome. I think a lot of people need that from companies that they work with. So let me ask you, what is one of the number one things that contractors seem to struggle with that they cut? Like, what's the number one thing that people come to you for when it comes to estimating, the thing that people trip up on?
Well, for the most part, when someone's coming to me, they're usually doing their own. Most of the time, it's a company that's new. Not always, but a lot of times it's a company that's new that is trying to grow and trying to take on larger projects. I think they can handle larger projects, but they're not sure how to estimate that type of work. Um,
Yeah.
or changing arenas. Sometimes you got a guy who does all process typing or does all like industrial electrical work, motor type stuff, and they want to make a change to like do office fit out work or
Yeah.
something that's kind of quick hitting, and they could just manage a project for 6 months and go to the next thing. And they're struggling in changing lanes. They don't know where to start. They don't know the players in that arena. They don't know the general contractors that kind of operate in those spaces. Because what I find and what I've had happen to me over the past 20 years in the industry is you get to doing one thing. For example, with my father, I was dealing with Walmart. I knew everybody involved with
Yeah.
Walmart, which is a ton of people, you know.
Yeah.
I knew everybody involved with that, but then when we kind of switched gears and tried to go to more HVAC work, more like rooftop replacement type stuff, you know, more like real like HVAC type work, we didn't know where to go. We didn't know how to get bids. We didn't know where to solicit ourselves, where to find those projects, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of estimating is that it's not necessary. I mean, listen, you need a good number, you need good communication, but you also need to find where the jobs are. And like that's something that I think a lot of new companies or expanding companies struggle with that I've been able to really help with because, like I said, I've jumped around a little bit, and because of that, I know the different arenas, I know the different avenues, I know the different players that do this type of work, and I can link those people in,
Yeah.
um, or at least tell them where to go. And like
Yeah.
that kind of consulting is invaluable, really. Like anyone, not anyone, but a lot of people can do a takeoff and tell you how much a job's going to cost around. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of people can't tell you, hey, go to JRM. They're doing this office fit out on this block, or go to
Yeah.
whoever. I know they're doing this mission critical work over here, whatever and
Yeah.
that's some of the insight that I think plays a really big hand in you know my how well I've done so far in business the last 6 months since I started out.
Yeah. Yeah. I would definitely pay my estimator if he tells me where to get work.
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's still
Estimating. That's what I want.
yeah, it's filling client need, and I can't guarantee you that they're going to give you the job. Obviously, you
Yeah.
can't do that, but I can tell you that I know this project's going on. I know Turner's the GC. I know Michael, what's his face, is the estimating manager there. You should maybe reach out to him. Don't tell him I told you to call.
Yeah.
I'm able to,
Hopefully, he doesn't listen to the podcast.
what I mean. I'm able to
Yeah.
kind of, angle you in the right way to find what you're looking for. For the
So,
most part.
how do you find that? Like, okay, so is this because you know people and you're talking to people? Is this because you have a certain particular website or thing you're involved in where you're able to see what projects are going on? Or how does that information come to you? Or how does somebody get that type of information?
So for me, it's mostly based on connection in the industry,
Okay.
dealing with multiple trades. So like I deal with like I told you before, I deal with mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Um, so a lot of times I'll get a plumbing guy reach out to me. Oh, I'm looking at this job, blah blah blah. And guess what? That job's right in the wheelhouse for this electrical guy that I deal with. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there's no conflict there because it's a separate trade.
Yep.
Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll put that electrician in touch with my client who's the plumbing client or
Yeah.
vice versa and they'll work together and they'll make the introduction themselves and guess what, now I'm out of it. I just made that link.
That's really cool.
um, and I try to do that as much as possible because guess what, these subs, this is what they need. They need to find these connections. They don't know that's
Yeah.
what they need to do. A lot of times
Yeah.
these guys don't know. They just head down, pounding, looking at drawings, sending out prices, and then not even picking up the phone. And a lot of times you kind of have to force that. You have to
Yeah.
force that connection for the good of them. And then they realize that, wow, I need to be doing this. And they start doing that elsewhere. And then all of a sudden their businesses, they could raise their numbers 30% and still get more work because they're
Yep.
making personal connections, and that's always that's what I tell everybody when I first talk to them. Stop emailing. Email, follow up a phone conversation with the email. Put it in
Yeah.
paper. I get that. You do have to have some back and forth in email, but use the phone, man. That is the most important thing I have found in 20 years of business.
Well, that is good information. I'm writing that down. I'm
Yeah.
gonna start doing that. Call people,
Some
make
email to them.
connections. Uh, that is very valuable information. Um, I lost it. I lost it. I had
Okay.
something. So Make it. Oh yeah. So I'm reading this book on another guy. I really
Mhm.
want to get on the podcast. His book's called "The Human Side of Construction," and awesome book. And he talks about some of those things that are lacking in the construction industry. It's like we're all about pricing and making money and doing the work, and at every level, from the employee to the dude on top, everybody's kind of lost that communication side, that the
Mhm.
human side, where I'm dealing with another human being. I'm not just dealing with the number. And I think we miss those relationships as well when we're working with somebody. We think they're trying to get over on us, and we're trying to make money, whatever it may be, and we're just looking at numbers, and then we end up losing more of those numbers in the long run because we're not building good relationships and not
Mhm.
building good communication with people. So that's really good. That's definitely something that's probably beneficial that you're giving people because again, like estimating, that's awesome. Nobody wants to lose money on a job, right? Nobody wants to make that mistake, but having that added benefit of somebody that's uh, consulting you and giving you valuable information that, hey, like you have to pick your phone up, you have to call these people, you have to make these kind of connections. That's insight that you just don't learn that. Like
Yeah, I do. And what I think is that I think everybody knows that. End of the day, I think everybody knows that it's valuable to make a connection in the construction industry. I just think people don't want to do it. And if you think about it in a way where you think, for me, it's this, right? I know that the next guy doesn't want to do it. So I'm
yeah,
going to do it because it puts
yep,
me then in the 1% of that out of 99 people, I'm the one person who's picking up the phone and calling.
yeah,
Who do you think? Like I'm looking at it, I look at it from two different perspectives, right? Because I also work for a general contractor where people are soliciting me pricing all the time. It's a huge company. We do massive work, and people want to be involved with my company.
yeah,
Maybe 5% of the subconscious I deal with call me and say, have you taken a look at my number? What do you think? Are we out of the game? Obviously, I'm not giving them, where everybody else is, but they try to start a conversation with me and want to know how the job's looking. What do we look like? Are you getting the job? Who else is bidding the job? Those conversations to me, I want to put that person up to the front of the line. If his number's a little bit higher, I'm not going to worry about it because this is somebody who's interested in the job. This is somebody who understands the job because now I'm on the phone with him and I'm running through the job with him, so I know he knows it. And
yeah,
it makes me more prone to give them that work. Now, having that perspective, not everybody has that because not everybody works for a general contractor. Everybody thinks that everybody's calling. It's just not the case. It's not.
yeah.
And I think about it when I sat at a desk at a subcontractor as a chief estimator. I never wanted to make those calls. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it either. But I did it. I pushed myself to do those things because I just knew it would be so much more productive. It makes the difference. So
That's
that's why.
interesting because so I worked for one company. The company I worked for through COVID, kept me working. I helped them with with the takeoffs for some projects for a few months. So I'm right there with you with the estimating. No, but I helped them with the takeoffs, and I was just doing the takeoffs and stuff, and then they'll punch it in the computer and get their numbers out. But I would see the assistant owner, the co-owner, who is also a project manager. I will see this guy calling people weekly and following up. So in my mind, seeing that, I would think that is what everybody does. And I'm
You
like, oh, this
think?
guy's probably pissed off, but it's not. So that's really good to know because that just went right over my head. I was like, okay, of course he's calling because he wants this job and he's gonna bug him. And but okay, so that's
Listen,
cool
there
to
is a
know.
line.
Yeah, that
There's definitely a line where, you know,
don't bug him.
yeah, you don't want to call 5 times in a week, but if you don't get somebody on the line, call back later in the week. You have to you have to have some social awareness. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Everybody's got to know, you know, have some respect for the other person's time as well.
yeah,
But you know, I think the experience you're going through, you were going through when you worked for that company, is not the normal. At
yeah,
least not near by me. It's not. And
yeah.
that's really great that you have people around, but so maybe that hinders it. You know, maybe you see somebody doing that all the time, and you're like, well, everybody else is doing it, so why do I bother doing it? I would
Yeah.
say do not think like that. I would say even if they are, then guess what? Then you're just behind. So catch the fuck up. You know,
Yeah.
get on the phone. You know, in my opinion, at least.
Advice for the day. No,
Yeah, yeah,
catch up, dang it. No.
yeah. Sorry, I don't know.
Oh, you're good. You're good. That's awesome. Um, okay, so that's cool. Yeah, because that did go over my head. That's such good advice because looking at it, I think in this day and age too, we're so used to texting, email,
Mhm.
messaging, anything except verbally talking to somebody.
Correct. Mhm.
And so when we see something like that, we don't know what to do with it. And in my mind, I'm just like, oh, everybody's probably calling this
Mhm.
contractor. I'm just going to be another person bugging them.
Mhm.
And without the added information that you're giving, I'm like, oh, everybody's not doing that.
Mhm.
I need to make sure that I'm one of the people that are calling. So
Yeah.
let me ask you now. Let's say just to put this into practice, I know we're going to talk about estimating, but this
Mhm.
is
That's
this
okay.
is really good.
I'll talk about whatever.
I didn't know you did this kind of work. So this is really good. This is valuable information. Um, so let's say you want to get into working with particular companies. So you're saying the thing to do is to actually call those companies
Absolutely.
and to be like, hey, is there any job that I could bid on, or what would that look like?
So
You have no
listen,
connection with them.
I think that there is some companies that will be like frustrated, maybe is the word, with somebody doing that and calling. But at the end of the day, if that's the company's name, if that's their culture there, then honestly, I don't want to do business with them. I want to do business with companies that are open to new opportunities, that want to see new contractors come through their doors. Understand that the people they're working for are not the only contractors in the country. I mean,
Yep.
we got a lot of good contractors here. And listen, the company that I work for is guilty of this as much as every other general contractor. You find a mechanical, electrical, plumbing guy that you're comfortable with. You want to give them all your work because you know that they get it done. They know that they're used to your procedures. So I get it. It's a little bit hard to break in, but if you have somebody on your staff or you yourself are a person who can communicate in some, you know, normal way, pick up the phone and call it, and you'll find somebody who will talk to you. And guess what? Even if you call 7 companies and you talk to 2 directors of estimating or even one, and they start sending you work, that's a win to me. I mean, just
Yep.
because the other 6 hung up on you, that's just life. That's sales. And I have a background in both of these things, and I know you can't win 100%. You can never
Yep.
win 100% of the things. So you just have to put your best effort out there, and you have to be able to, you have to be able to talk the industry. That's very important. You know what I mean? Being able to understand, knowing the industry, knowing other jobs. It takes a little research and homework. Oh, these guys did this job over here. Let me bring
Yep.
that up. I'll call the company. I'll say, hey, can you send me some bids? No, I say, hey, man, I saw you guys working over on 94th Street. That job looks great, man. We've also worked with that mechanical company before. I was wondering if you guys have any other bids coming up. We'd love to bid with you. We've worked with them. You find the connections there, and
Yep.
you can't make it come off like a cold call per se, even though that's exactly what it is. Find the connection.
Yeah.
There's a connection somewhere. You know what I mean? Even if it's,
Yeah.
oh, I ate at that restaurant right next door to the job you're doing. Anything to just kind of gear it off of
Yep.
the sales thing and into a personal conversation. Once you're doing that, now the sky's the limit. They got this job going on over here. They're thinking about bidding this. Did you hear about that? And you're just in a conversation that flows.
Yeah, there is a difference between just a straight cold call and a cold
Mm-hmm.
call. You could warm up a little bit,
Exactly.
by making some connection. Because yeah, if a bunch of people are calling me, and one person makes an actual genuine connection,
Mm-hmm.
that's the person that's going to stay imprinted in my head, and that's the person I'm probably going to think about when I'm considering another person's bid coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really good. That's good stuff. I started doing this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so Let me ask you a question, just something I always wondered about. So if somebody says like, "Oh, I'm on a, I got $1 million job we're on, right?"
Mhm,
Are they talking about this is my ignorance here. Are they
mhm.
talking about the entire job cost $1 million? They're not talking about their
Well, it depends who you're talking to. So if you're talking to the electrician and he
like,
tells
I'm on a
them,
million dollar job. The entire job costs $1 million. It depends.
yeah, sorry, I got a little disrupted there
Yeah,
with the
no, you're good. You're good.
um, so yeah, basically, I think what they're saying is if it's an electrician or a mechanical guy saying that, it's probably his contract's $1 million.
Oh, okay.
To be honest, that's subjective. Who the hell knows? He could be talking about the whole job.
I've been
I don't
wondering that for years.
know. Yeah. So who knows?
All right, yeah, because they're like, yeah, we're doing like $1 million jobs, and I'm like, okay, are you making $1 million on this, or is the whole thing $1 million?
Yeah. Who
I
knows?
don't know how much these things cost.
Yeah. I mean, like mostly $1 million. I mean, here in New York, it's maybe a little different in the city. Like the $1 million electrical contract is fairly big. It's pretty big. But there's stuff like that all the time here. There's
Yeah,
a lot of work, and most of the contractors that I'm dealing with are doing work between like 100,000 and $1 million contracts. I do some estimating for guys who are doing up to like $2 to $5 million contracts on specific trades. But then the overall job, you're talking about 20, 30 million, and then the work I do at the general contracting company I work for is up to 300 million, 400 million. These are very
gosh,
big
yeah,
jobs. Yeah. And those I'm seeing those jobs from the MEP side also. I'm not taking them off because we rely on our subs for a lot of that kind of work. For the
yeah.
takeoff side, I'm just leveling that. But I don't really want to take off that big a job. That thing takes forever. But
Oh yeah,
yeah, I mean,
that's boring as heck.
yeah, you're sitting there, click, 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 click. I'm counting duplexes, and I'm like,
Rethinking your life.
yeah. So, but yeah, there's a big, wide array of contract value, especially in the city and throughout Long. I'm from Long Island. There's a lot of work out here. That's it's a large spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, uh, can you walk us through the process of bidding? Because you mentioned
Sure.
the takeoffs, you mentioned the estimating. So let's
Mhm.
say a company's like, I have no clue about this. I just started. I got 50,000 in the bank. I
Mhm.
want to bid on some projects. What's the process from getting the prints, taking them, doing the takeoff? What do all these steps look like for a company?
So the way I do it is, I mean, everybody's got their own process, but my process always comes, start from, let's say I'm receiving the drawings from. I'm going to put this from a subcontractor's perspective instead of a consultant's perspective, right? I think that's more value there for you guys. So I'm working on an electric company. I get a general contractor sends me a job. They say, listen, I need a number on this. I take the drawings, I put them into my software. First thing I always do is I call him up and I say, hey, thanks. I received just confirming, I received the job that you sent on 222 Broadway, whatever. Um, Thanks for sending it over to us. I'm going to take a look at it. It could have the due date on there. When do you guys need it back by? And then, even if it says it, I ask them. They tell me I need it back in 2 weeks. I said, or sometimes they'll say, listen, the date's in 2 weeks. I'd like it back in a week. Can you guys help me on the, there's a conversation started. Okay, yeah, we can do what we can. We'd really love to work with you. I always do that first, regardless. Even if it has all the information in the email, I always call and just confirm I got it, right? Do the takeoff. Most of the time for an electrical job, I'm counting duplexes, counting quads, counting this, running out the home runs. What size is MCM am I using? Is it an underground service? I kind of go through the job as a whole. You know, kind of get some ideas on the important things. What's the service look like? What's the size of the service? This is a 4,000 amp service. Okay, what's coming in? Are we doing the primary? Are we doing the pad mount? Are we just doing the? Because a lot of times in New York we won't do the pad mount. We'll just do the the base, and we'll just run the secondary. So I find all those things out because those are the big money items, right? The switch gear, the fixture package
Yeah.
usually drives the job, right? So
Yeah.
if I need a fix, so if it's a fixture package that needs to come from a national vendor, that's something that I find out right away. I'll tell the, I'll shoot that out to the vendor. You know, can you give me a number on this fixture package? Can you give me a number on this switchgear package? Um,
But you're
you know,
counting
get
those
the.
out first.
Usually, I will count the lighting fixtures because they usually want them. They usually want the lighting fixture
Yeah.
counts. They
Yeah.
won't. They won't do it themselves. You know, these guys at the supply houses are prima donnas. They don't want to. They don't want to count that drawing.
Well, that
So
makes sense.
yeah, you
Tell me how
got
many
to.
you need, man.
Yeah, so you got to send them the counts, and I'm just messing around. Obviously, they
Yeah.
got a lot going on, so they don't. It's our job to do that. So we count the fixtures, send it out to them. We got this many fixture A, this many fixture B. What's the price? They send it back. Now I implement that into my bid. While they're working on that, I'm taking off all the duplexes, all the home runs, what the you know, the other various aspects of the job. How
Yeah.
far is this feeder for the site lighting, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
measure all that stuff out on my software. Will now give me all those counts, and then I transfer them onto an Excel sheet. Most of the time, I use an Excel sheet that kind of just I have my numbers kind of built around the way I do it. You know what I mean? I usually include my circuitry within my outlet price, within my fixture price. I usually include that material number in there, include that labor in there, what it's going to cost to go the 3 or 4 feet to the next circuit. I don't run out every circuit. You know what I mean? I'm not
Okay.
measuring, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I have a number that's fat enough to fit that in there. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's still tight enough that you're in line with the next guy. And this comes with a lot of time. Sometimes if you're a new estimator, I will recommend running out the circuitry, really, you know, figuring out, you know, here you can use a lot of like MC cable and stuff. I
Yeah.
don't know the different code where you guys are, but based on the code and based on what we can use here, I recommend the new estimator kind of do everything as detailed as possible until you get a feel of how much that costs. On every job, it's almost the same, and then you kind
Yeah.
of just build that into your pricing for your individual things. This way, you just have to count duplexes. This
Yep.
way you just have to count J boxes and stub ups. How much is a 10-foot stub and a J box? You know, you don't have
Yep.
to like put the conduit in or whatever. The one thing I always do say, you have to do, is if you have a feeder for a panel, if you have like a 3/0 or anything above like a 2 wire, I say run it out, price it out, because that can get expensive. You know what I mean? If you have a
Yep.
300, 400 foot run of like 3/0 and the ground or something, run it out, price it based on a commodity sheet that you can get from any of these vendors, right? And use that for pricing. And then, then you work on your overhead, your profit, what's your tax code, where you're at, how much is tax, is it a tax exempt job? These are all things that are important. And I also try to include some general condition type stuff, mobilization. You got a bunch of phases, how many phases you got to add a couple grand for mobilization. Um, your lift, these little things that come up. You kind of sometimes have to get the scars first. You kind of
Yep.
sometimes got to lose money on those things before you start remembering including them. But
Yep.
as time goes on, you start remembering these things and you start including them in your bids. And sometimes it prices you out of the bid because the new guy who's bidding on the job doesn't remember. So
The GC is
uh,
about to make some extra money.
yeah, so it is what it is, and if you win 1 out of 10 jobs you bid on, you're doing all right. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. You can't win every one, but uh, you know, after a while, you see that this is a productive company. We're growing. We might still be getting the same amount of jobs, but now the jobs are getting bigger. We're knowing more people. We're getting more jobs in. We're able to bid more accurately, and look at our bottom line. It's going up and up and up, and
Yeah.
that's when you start really understanding that it's worth it to do this.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's a really good breakdown. because
I tried to cater towards electrical,
no, that's good because that's mostly who's listening to this, and
Yeah,
probably a couple plumbers.
yeah.
No,
Well, they're easy.
because somebody's not thinking like, oh, a sheet of a set of prints might cost
Mhm,
$300,
mhm,
and you're gonna have a few sets of prints. You're gonna be reprinting these, like, and you don't
mhm,
factor that in.
mhm.
That's gonna be
It
pretty
can be.
expensive.
It
You
can
need you
be.
need you
Mhm,
need 4 lifts, and you only ordered one. You're gonna
mhm. Well, that can get
you
there.
only
Yeah.
factored in one.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's gonna be expensive.
Mhm.
And so we were saying out the wires, because yeah, if you're doing you're saying when it comes to the feeders, you're coming to the bigger wires, all your
Yeah.
service stuff and your feeders,
Mhm,
measure that out because you're gonna have that not only in a
mhm.
bigger size wire, but that's gonna be ran in some sort of a conduit, unless it's
Yes.
like SCR cable. So
Mhm.
maybe it's gonna be underground, and that's gonna be an additional cost because you got to
Saw
dig,
cutting. Yeah.
saw cutting,
Yeah.
digging. So yeah,
So
so that's
I all yeah. So basically, the problem with that a lot of times is they don't always lay that out. Sometimes they'll say, okay, well, here's the panel and here's the service. They'll show those two items, but they will never show the feeder between them or whatever. So a lot of times it takes a little
you got to
coordination of the
measure it.
joints. Yeah, you got to look on the riser. On the riser, it tells you, okay, this is 3 500s running here, and then you got to measure it out yourself and do the routing yourself because they don't always show you that stuff. So
Yeah,
newer estimators will miss that a lot of times, or they'll take it off as like on the riser diagram as like a few feet or something, and it's really on the other side of the building. You know what I mean? So
yep.
it's something that has got me when I was new to this. There was something that I missed a lot is the coordination between the riser diagram and the floor plan. You know what I mean? Especially on a bigger job, like those things can really add a lot of money to the job.
Oh yeah, I remember one thing when I was measuring out the feeders. Uh, he was like, "Hey, you got to add like 10 feet on each side or more,
Mm-hmm.
because
Well,
like it's
think
not
about
just
it.
it's a
Yeah,
straight shot. It's gonna come up a wall. It's gonna come
yeah.
down a
Mhm.
wall, and yeah, you add that 10-20 feet up
You got to
between
go
the
up and then maybe back down into the top of the panel, then through the
yep.
panel into the lugs. There's a lot of wire there.
Yeah, if you miss that, that's gonna be pretty expensive over 50,
Yeah,
60 units.
yeah, yes,
Yeah,
yes. Mm-hmm.
that's flipping awesome. All right, so what are I know you shared a couple, but what are some of like the things that people just like miss like on a bid? They're not thinking about is it obviously like some equipment and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but if you just run through a few things like permits or whatever,
Yeah.
like what are a few things that you've noticed that people just miss on bids?
So a lot of it has to do. So here in New York, a lot of the electricians will not buy the fixture packages. The general contractor will buy it, or they'll even sub out a separate contract if the job's big enough for fixture packages. Um, and then the electrician who's doing the installation, they don't include, accepting the delivery, holding
Mm.
the,
Oh,
storing the fixtures, any coordination with any broken things. They don't include that, and it's hard to include that. It's hard to include, like, you never know if the fixture's gonna be broken. Whatever, you got to do coordination. That's kind of hard, but the delivery and the receiving and the unpacking, like you could have a fixture package here that's $3 million fixture package alone. Like I see
gosh.
them all the time. For say you got like a 11-story building in the city that you're doing all the fixtures for, and they got these chandeliers and very high end stuff, and that takes some handling, man. That takes some time to take that stuff off the truck, bring it back to your storage, or bring it onto the site. If you got to walk up 15 stories, sometimes it's the 60th floor of a building, like that takes a lot of time. So that's
Yeah.
something they miss. General conditions, testing, stuff like that. You got to include that in your number. And I usually build that in, you know what I mean? Putting a little extra time in for putting a duplex in. You might be able to do a few in an hour, but instead I'll cut the number in half so that there's time in there for testing and understanding troubleshooting if you have any issues with the circuitry. Um, you know, it's really mostly like stuff we talked about, lifts, you know, coordination with permitting. Like I try to, like when I'm doing a bid, I normally exclude that stuff. I let the, as a consultant, I usually exclude like permitting and stuff and let that the customer figure out what their permitting costs are and include it in the bid afterwards and add it on. But as a subcontractor, you have to include those. You have to understand that stuff. Coordination with the utility companies, that's a big one. People don't, a lot of times we got a big vault coming in and electricians got to coordinate, putting the vault in the ground, running their wires in. You got to understand the utility's going to take their sweet time putting it in or figuring out when they're coming in. So these are all mobilization issues
Yeah.
that can add up. Again, if you start thinking too detailed about it, though, you're going to price yourself out every job. So there's got to be some middle ground. You know what I mean? There's got to be
Yeah.
some understanding that some jobs you're gonna kill it. Your coordination's gonna be perfect. You're doing BIM, everything's right. Your shop drawings come in perfect, no problem. And then some jobs you're gonna be like, you got hits everywhere in your shop drawings. There's no BIM coordination. The utility company's taking 3 weeks to bring the vaults. You got to remobilize. Like it's a give and take. Sometimes you win them, sometimes you lose them. So you kind of have to balance that somehow. You know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You gotta a lot the execution of things, the
Mm-hmm.
management of things is going to be a big part of it. Because even if you
Exactly.
nail it, and then stuff starts falling apart, through your management and how you're running everything, and end up
Mm-hmm. I
losing
agree.
money anyways.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I seen
That's most important.
I seen somebody get let go from their estimating job because they I guess they forgot all the to include all the lights on the exterior of the building,
That'd be
and
a tough
so
one.
that was labor. And, and he got let go from that
Those
company.
exterior lights, they can be expensive, man. Some of those wall wash lights are like the exterior sconces. Sometimes they're $600 a fixture. And like the installation, you got to punch through the brick a lot of times. There's a lot
Yep.
of coring. Like that stuff adds up, man.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that. Don't miss your lighting for your
Yeah,
exterior.
especially if you're an electrician.
Yeah, you might need that. Yeah, that's awesome. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned with estimated that you're like, wow, like if I knew this when I was, 20 something years old, 20 years old, I would have killed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's constantly evolving. I'm constantly doing things a little differently because I learned something new. I mean, most of the stuff I learned from, I took an L on. You know what I mean? Everybody takes L's. Not everybody wins every one. Everybody gets burnt at some point. The real important thing is that you don't get burnt too bad where the
Yep.
company's shutting down. Like I've seen companies
Yep.
shut down over bad estimates. You know what I mean? It happens.
Yeah.
Companies get involved in big work. They think they really trust their estimators, and then they miss something, and they can't afford to put it on their back and just handle it. And they close their doors for it. So there is definitely losses that come along the way. We lose, like I said, you forget the lift on this one. You didn't run out that feeder. You missed this, enlarged drawing that has like 10 home runs on it. You miss like these things
Yeah.
and you learn from it. Okay, now I need to make sure I'm looking at all the drawings, even if it says enlarged. Sometimes there's more information on those than there is on the overall drawing, or I double up. One time I had a drawing where you have a full floor, and then on that floor there's separate drawings for A, B, and C. Because it's such a big scale that
Oh
they
yeah.
scale it down, and instead of doing it on one or the other, I took it off on the overall drawing and then on the smaller drawings. And this is when I was a young estimator, and my number was double what it should be, and I'm like, why is my number double? We lost the job, obviously. It's better to lose it high. It's better to lose it high than to win it low, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
we lost it high, and I'm trying to figure out. And then my senior estimator at the time came over, showed me, what I did wrong. And I was like, I couldn't believe that I did it. But, sometimes you just, you're zoned out in these things. It's like very, procedural. And you're going through it and you're regimented and you're checking all the things. But then something just you miss. And I would recommend, and I do this now. I go after I finish my takeoff, before I put it into my pricing sheets and all that, I go back through. I always go back through. I always check every floor. What I do is I put my legend, say like, so it'll come up on the screen what is on each page, and you can really see everything there. And sometimes that's all it takes, and you'll catch this. Oh, I missed this occupancy sensor here. I missed this room's lighting controls or whatever, and
Yeah.
um, and you catch them. But reviewing your work is important. If you have the opportunity to have somebody else look at your work, even better. But that's kind of rare to have that. Have somebody else who's able to do that with you. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we live and we learn. The most important thing is that when we make those mistakes, we we don't make them again. We
Yep.
learn from them. And like that's life, right? You make fucking mistakes in life, and you learn from them, and like that's the only reason we get anywhere, right? That's the only way we learn is to take an L sometimes. So
Yep. And if you don't, then that's where natural selection comes in.
yeah, yeah.
You, no, you brought that on yourself, buddy.
Yeah.
No, that is that's awesome. Oh, how do you I don't know if you deal with this, but how should somebody factor in their profit when they're making their bid? Is it, I know that the number percentage of the profit would probably be different for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but like let's say somebody in New York, like what would be one, how would somebody factor it in to their bid? And two, how what is a safe percentage for somebody?
So in general, for a subcontractor, first thing I deal with when I'm dealing on the consulting side, when I'm dealing with a subcontractor, I ask them, what is your labor rate for your highest paid guy? What's your labor rate for your lowest paid guy? And what's the burden on them? So like a lot of times it'll be like, oh, $65 an hour is what I pay the guy. But that's not the burden, right? The burden is what's their insurance, what's their benefit package, what is their total labor burden. And a lot of times in New York, we're coming out around $85 an hour, right? 85 non-union, open
Yeah.
shop job. Um, $85 an hour kind of is the middle. You got a high guy at maybe 95, a low guy maybe at 75. So we're bidding it like as a two guys on the job per day at $85 an hour with the full burden, right? So that's the starting line for me. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher, but that's kind of like where we're at, right?
Yeah.
Now, and remember, I know this is you're in California, I'm in New York. Those numbers might sound normal to us. Somebody in Kentucky is probably like $85 an hour. What are you kidding me? We're paying like what I mean, it seems
Yeah.
high, but that's just the market, right? So that changes. I deal with people in St. Louis, where it's $45 an hour. I deal with somebody in Kansas where her labor rates are like $65 an hour, and it's like where they're comfortable, right? And
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
know where they're comfortable. They know what they're doing. On the material pricing, when I'm pricing material, pipe, wire, any kind of actual material for the job, you generally can get like 10%, right? Even equipment, you're around 10%. So basically, what I do is I try to break that out separately than my labor. The labor I try to give the customer, the client, between 15 and 20% overhead and profit, because you got to think about it on the project management level. I'm not putting project management costs into a bid. You know what I mean? That's all in office overhead, right? This is all
Yeah.
overhead for the project that you have to handle, but you can't necessarily put into how do you measure that? So you put it into a percentage. And then at the end of the bottom of the estimate, I usually give them a range between 10 and 20% of O&P, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the size, if it's a $7 million job, it's going to be closer to like 12%. I'm not going to give them 20% O&P on a $12 million job. It's like 600 grand.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So we're not going
Yeah.
to. We try to. We try to. You have to. It has to scale with the size of the job, but
Yeah.
So 10% on a job like that big is not, it's still a nice number in overhead fee. And some people will be like, no, I want the 20. It's really up to the customer. Because as me as a consultant, I'm giving you, this is what the job costs. Now you tell me what you want to make on it. You know what I mean? If you
Yeah.
feel like you know this, and a lot of it comes down to their relationship with general contractors, their comfortability with the type of work. Like the contractor, plumbing contractor I work with in Missouri, she does a lot of stick frame, a lot of wood frame, residential work, big work, townhouses, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But she's comfortable in that space. You know what I mean? It's no like slab, or no concrete slab, not as much concrete slab buildings, superstructure stuff. It's mostly, and she wants to stay in that arena. She's comfortable there. She'll go 12%, 15%, whatever. She's comfortable. She knows she'll make money. New York, a little different. And these people like,
Yeah.
I want that 25%. I don't
Heck
care.
yeah.
I know this guy. We're gonna get the job. Me and him had drinks last night. 30%. And it's
Oh,
like,
heck yeah. I want to have a drink with that guy.
yeah. So, but that's how it is here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of that, and like, you got to just kind of be in it or not. And a lot of people will decide their margins based on their comfortability with the GC, their comfortability with the type of project, and the amount. And so it's a scale, really. It's long story short, it's a sliding scale between
Yeah.
10 and 20%.
But no, that's a good number because somebody might
Yeah.
not factor that in at all. Somebody
Yeah.
might be like, oh, I pay my guys, $60 an hour. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna charge $80 an hour, 85
Mm-hmm.
an hour. And then they don't realize, oh wait, there's a burden on that,
Yeah.
Now you don't have
A
any
lot of people
profit.
don't.
But
You'd be
I know a
surprised.
lot of people that they'll make money off of, my guy's $80 an hour, $60 an hour. It's gonna be, 85 to for the
Mm-hmm.
burden, and then I'm gonna charge 100, 125, whatever for my guy. And that's where I'm
But that's
making my
okay.
money from. And which yeah,
But
that's
that's
not too
not the,
bad.
no, that's the same thing pretty much. It's the same
Yeah.
thing because I'm honestly, I'm factoring in the exact, not the exact, but a roundabout labor number with the burden into the bid. And then I'm just making the markup at the end. But honestly, when you give a number to a GC for change order, you're building that overhead and profit into your labor number. So it's like,
Yep.
it's six in one hand, half a dozen in the other. It's the same number at the end of the day. It's just how you're calculating it. To me, it's easy to calculate at the end of the job, at the end of the estimate.
Yeah. When I went to the school for the C10 to prep, they
Mm-hmm.
gave us a method, and it confused the heck out of me the entire time. So I'm not much of a math guy. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they gave us a method to do it. They taught us to do it at the end, and I still don't know how the heck they. I learned it for the test, but then I was like, dude,
Yeah.
I have no clue how to calculate. But no, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's why you have Excel sheets now. You build those formulas right in, and guess what?
Oh yeah.
Every job is just built in there. You put it in. I could change the number from 10, 25, I put whatever percentage I want, and then we'll just calculate it. You know what I mean? I
Oh
don't have to
yeah.
worry about it.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, the Excel sheets are flipping awesome. I got a couple that
Oh.
somebody sent me, and I'm like, okay. Well, which is cool because I'm like, I have a way that I've bid jobs in the back
Mhm.
in the past, and they work. So I'll compare mine to the sheets that somebody sends me because I don't want to do this every time. I want to plug it into
Yeah.
the sheet. So that works.
Well,
So
yeah,
what
but that's what you do. That's how you. The one thing that's important when starting estimating, like as an owner. So a lot of owners, when they start their company, they have to do the estimating themselves. They can't pay somebody to do an estimate. They need
Yeah.
to do the estimating themselves. And basically, what you do is you take all this shit that you've gotten throughout the years, all this information, whatever spreadsheets you have, and you use that until you can develop the next thing and the next thing. But in the beginning of your company, it is so important to put processes and procedures in place that you will be able to continually use because you're going to
Yeah.
save money on overhead that way. Instead of having to, every job you're putting together a separate Excel sheet, you're trying to figure out, well, how do I do this math again? What's this? How do I do this? Where do I put this number? No, you have a template that you bring to every job that you just plug in the numbers. That's the only thing that changes. And then, there'll be little intricacies here and there that are different, but if you develop these procedures early on and you build on them as your
Yeah.
company grows, then you have the same procedure generally as you started with. It's set. You've now grown. You're comfortable with this. Now your company has grown. Your procedures have grown. New people are interacting with those sheets and bringing something new to it, and that's how you progress.
Yeah.
That's how it gets better. And you gotta start somewhere.
No, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That is that is super cool. Yeah. What what software, not for necessarily estimating, but
Mm-hmm.
for actually having prints counting on, because I counted on regular prints and that was boring as heck, dude. I mean, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure the computer's boring too, but
They're
what
both.
software it all sucks. What software do you think would be good for somebody starting out with their company that
So
be good to learn?
I have heard you talk about learning to use Bluebeam, right? You're
Yep.
learning to use Bluebeam. Um, that's fine. So Bluebeam is really good for viewing drawings, for flipping through pages, say a rip and read, understanding a job.
Yeah.
It really has a nice breakdown. You can do some takeoffs on there for smaller jobs for sure. You can count stuff off on there. But I have used estimating software designed for estimating. So like I because Bluebeam's a PDF software, right? It's great for that. It's probably the best PDF in my opinion. It's the best PDF viewing software and editing software. But I use Plan Swift, which it's a very simple estimating program. Very simple, very user friendly. I've used some extremely technical ones in the past that you hear about, in the construction trades. Those are great for like a general contractor maybe, but like for the sub trades that I deal with, I just use a simple estimating software where I
Yeah.
can measure out lines, where I can count, counts, where I can do counts. Um, and I don't have to put in every fitting. Like I've worked, so say we're putting in rigid conduit, whatever, for an underground, say, a 4 inch. I don't want to have to measure out, okay, 10 feet, here's where we're putting the connector. 10 feet, here's where we're putting you know what I mean? So
Yep.
I build those connectors, the hangers, all that's built into my personal number that I
Yeah.
have for that. You
Yeah.
know, um, with some of the more technical programs, you need to put the pricing for every length of conduit in. And then you have to put the pricing for the fitting in. And what type of fitting is it? Is it a reducer? Is it a coupling? Is it a 90? What is it? Is it a street? Is it an elbow? So, and you have to take those off. So this is
Yeah.
adding huge amount of time to your overhead on a pre-construction bid that you may not ever see. To me,
Yep.
that makes no sense. To me, it
Yeah. Screw
makes
that.
sense to use the simple program, understand the pricing. Your number might be a little fat here and there. You might be a little high, but at the end of the day, you're saving that overhead for once you get the job. Okay, now you got to level it out. Now you have the project. Now you got to manage the project. Now manage the project, that's where you're going to put your overhead in because now you have the job. Now it's worth putting that money into it.
Yeah.
Um, Now you're going to figure out the fittings. You're going to figure out all that and exactly what you need for submittals and all that stuff. But to me, a plan Swift estimating software or an on-screen takeoff, something simple, is the best way to go. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let me ask you this question. We're getting close to the end.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're killing it right now. You've been in it 6 months. Let's say you're 6 months more into it, and everybody's bids, everybody's estimates. Oh, hold up. You're just killing it. You're helping everybody out. And due to this, a lot of people are paying back their loans, right? The banks are like, I don't like the fact that this guy's, making everybody excel.
Mm-hmm.
So what Chase does is they unfreeze JP Morgan. I don't know if you know this, but they got him frozen somewhere. He's still
Mm-hmm.
alive. They unfreeze JP Morgan. And then they tell him about this, like, hey, this guy named Rob over here in New York, he's killing it, and we're losing money.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta go take care of him. JP Morgan gets pissed, rolls his sleeves, finds you, he's coming after you, and he wants to fight. Who's gonna win in a one-on-one fist fight between you and unfrozen JP Morgan?
Me, of course. He's an old man. Your bandwidth is low. You keep cutting off a little bit, but
You
yeah, no.
versus 20-year-old.
Oh, 20-year-old
Oh,
JP Morgan. I still think I take him.
what what before we hop off, is there anything else you want to share? Of course, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, let's start there. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, get some estimating service, or just want to
Mhm.
chat with you, like, how do they find you?
Well, they can email me at office@estimatingpartner.com. They could, that's probably the best way. I'm on Instagram, estimating partner on Instagram. Those ways are great. That's probably the easiest way to get me. I'm very active on all those platforms. So that's probably the best way to get me. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about this stuff. Even if they listen, I help people out with this stuff all the time. You know what I mean? I help a lot of customers out, and then I never hear from them again. And I don't care about that because I'm happy to just put my name out there, assist, and do what I can. So if any questions about growth, especially listen, I'm in the New York area, but I do work throughout the country. Um, I'm able to understand. I've done work probably where everybody's listening to this. So I am happy to help if anything comes up. So those are the two best ways to reach me.
Yep, that's awesome. Is there any closing thing you want to just share with anybody? Anything you want to put out there? You think somebody should
No,
know?
listen, I'm just happy to have done this. I'm glad you asked me to do it. I've been listening to your podcast. I think it's great. Shout out to your boy Nico. I think what he's doing with his charitable give back work with was it waves for recovery. I think that's great. Everybody
Yeah,
go
ways
check
to
that out.
recover.
Everybody check that out. I checked it out after I heard Nico on your podcast. I think it's really interesting and really important. You know, and that's really it, man. I'm glad you're doing this. I think it's important. I think it's good to get people on here who are in positions like we're in, or we've been in, or we've been able to progress our careers in ways that we can help other people do that. I really think that's really important. And I've heard you say multiple times that you didn't really have many mentors coming up through the trades. And I think that's something that needs to change. I'm passionate about that. I'm happy to help people when they need it. I'm not just out to make a buck, man. I really am not. I'm happy to help anybody who needs help. And I've always been like that. So reach out, man.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Oh, hey, dude, I genuinely appreciate you coming on. I did not know the podcast was going to be this good of an episode. I feel like I got a lot of value. I was like estimating. This is a thing that bores people, but you've managed to make it an actually entertaining episode. That's not just entertaining, but actually very valuable. So, dude, I appreciate that. Yeah. So I'll let you go, and definitely got to get you back on the podcast at some point in time.
Anytime.
And talk some more stuff. Pretty sure there's other stuff you do besides estimating, but we could talk. We could talk. Man, I wish you the best success in your company, and I hope that your family prosper from this, and I hope your company just takes off, man.
Thank
Best of
you.
success for you.
Thank you. You too,
I
man.
will let you go.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk soon, man.
All right, I'll talk to you later, boss. Peace.
Peace.